At 18, during summer break with no job, I spent most days gaming and watching TV. My parents had left town for several days, leaving me alone in the house, a routine occurrence that never bothered me before. Late one evening, around 11 or midnight, while watching Netflix and scrolling through my phone, a knock echoed from the front door. I paused the show and approached cautiously. The late hour suddenly struck me as unusual, making me hesitate before carelessly opening the door. Through the peephole, I observed two men in matching attire standing patiently on the porch. I wrestled with whether to acknowledge my presence by asking their business, but ultimately remained silent, watching and waiting for their departure. Moments later, they called out, "Hello, we're here to speak with Mr. and Mrs. Ian," referring to my parents, though I've changed the name for privacy. Their request confused me, but I maintained my silence, knowing the hour was far too late for any legitimate visit. After a minute of waiting, the men exchanged quiet words before walking off the porch. With the outdoor lights switched off, I couldn't track their movement, and strangely, I never spotted any headlights or vehicles, suggesting they had walked here, which only deepened the mystery. Returning to the television, I kept it paused to listen for their return. Within minutes, footsteps approached the house again. Instead of returning to the front door, they circled toward the side of the house. I rushed to the back window as they entered the backyard, watching them unlatch the fence gate. Hiding from view while listening to them approach the back door, I heard their conversation before they began manipulating the door mechanism. Seizing the moment, I grabbed my phone and retreated to the garage, calling police to report the potential break-in. Less than a minute later, a sharp pop resonated through the house as the back door slid open. Their footsteps traversed the house directly toward the stairs leading to the bedrooms upstairs. A door opened, they entered, then closed it behind them. After that, complete silence. I endured 10 horrifying minutes of stillness before police vehicles arrived. When they did, hurried footsteps echoed upstairs, followed by the two men arguing. Officers entered through the compromised back door and rushed upstairs, while another officer escorted me from the garage. The intruders offered no resistance during arrest, yet remained completely silent about their motives. Despite weeks passing and clear evidence they weren't simple burglars, authorities could only charge them with breaking and entering. The disturbing reality haunts me. They seemed specifically interested in my parents, appearing prepared to wait upstairs until their return from the trip. I questioned whether revealing myself would have prevented the break-in, but something about their calculated behavior suggests they would have proceeded regardless, doing whatever necessary to anyone who interfered.
Don't forget to like and subscribe if you dare to hear more chilling stories.
Living alone on a vast plot of land in rural Wyoming, I cherish the isolation my small but cozy house provides. This incident occurred 4 years ago during spring 2019, amid a month of relentless daily rainfall. On a Sunday evening, around 6 or 7 p.m., while resting and watching television after work, an unexpected knock, barely audible through the rain, caught my attention. Opening the door revealed a random stranger, not a postal worker or anyone with legitimate business visiting my remote property. "How can I help you?" I inquired. The man, appearing to be in his late 20s, explained he'd been camping in the nearby woods, encountered trouble, and needed shelter for the night. Given my house's location, if truthful, reaching my doorstep would make sense, as I was the closest residence within 5 or 6 miles of the surrounding wilderness. Despite the pouring rain that evoked sympathy, the potential danger of admitting a stranger into my home remained paramount. I offered him use of my phone to arrange transportation into town, but he declined. After I firmly stated he couldn't stay, he departed. Watching him walk partway down the dirt road before veering into the woods struck me as odd, but within minutes I'd returned my attention to television programming. At least 2 hours later, well into the night, an orange glow emanating from my backyard window caught my attention. Moving the curtain aside, through the rain and fog, I spotted a small campfire flickering beneath a large tree in the middle of the woods behind my house. Despite the downpour, a figure stood beside it holding an indistinguishable object, though I couldn't determine if he faced my house or the deeper woods. Closing the curtains, I contacted police to report the person outside my residence. Knowing their arrival would likely take an hour, and recognizing the individual wasn't immediately harming me, I simply wanted them removed before bedtime. After ending the call, I checked the window again. The fire continued burning softly, but the figure had vanished. Then footsteps approached the house. Racing to another window, I glimpsed him passing by with a hunting rifle before he disappeared around the corner toward the front door. He hammered on the door several times before falling silent. I retrieved my self-defense handgun from the hallway closet and positioned myself along the wall, still processing the unfolding situation. He struck the door again, this time clearly with his rifle stock, nearly splintering a panel. Realizing I needed to deter him immediately, before the situation became life or death, I fired a warning shot toward the door frame, temporarily deafening myself as the report echoed through the house. When my hearing returned, only the sound of rain remained. No footsteps, banging, or shouting. After 5 minutes of silence, I gathered courage to peer through the pee-hole, finding an empty porch. Clear footprints in the yard led away from the house, indicating his immediate flight after my warning shot. Police conducted a thorough search, discovering disturbing details near the former campfire location. They found a duffel bag with evidence of recent burial and excavation, likely occurring just hours before the attack. Authorities concluded it was most probably a burglary kit, or possibly even a murder kit, planted in advance for later retrieval. This revelation meant whoever attacked me had planned the assault and had been near my house at least once before that night. His specific motivation for targeting me remains unknown, and his identity and current whereabouts are no closer to resolution than they were 4 years ago. I continue living in the same house, worrying daily about his potential return.
Don't forget to like and subscribe if you dare to hear more chilling stories. During my middle and high school years, I lived with my mother in a small house. She worked overnight shifts, leaving me alone most nights between 8 p.m. and 4 a.m. This incident occurred a few months before my high school graduation. On a typical evening at 7:30, I bid my mother goodbye as usual, then spent several hours gaming. Being a school night, I couldn't stay up extremely late, though I pushed bedtime later than advisable. Around 11:30, I shut down my gaming setup and headed upstairs to bed, but spent probably another hour on my phone before finally falling asleep. I awoke thinking I'd heard a door closing downstairs. Glancing at the bedside clock showing 3:30 a.m., I assumed my mother had returned home early from work. Attempting to return to sleep, I listened to footsteps moving around downstairs. After a minute, I began listening more intently. Usually, my mother went straight upstairs upon arriving home to prepare for bed, but these footsteps seemed to wander aimlessly, as if someone was touring the house. Listening for another 2 or 3 minutes, I realized the movement never stopped. They moved through each room, walking slowly and deliberately. Growing nervous that it might not be my mother, I rose and turned on my bedroom light. Almost immediately, the footsteps ceased. Listening from behind my door, I heard nothing. Carefully opening the door and peering into the hallway, I expected to see light from downstairs, but the entire house remained dark. Whoever had been walking around hadn't activated any lights, which frightened me more than I already was. Ensuring I made no sound, I stepped further down the hallway until I reached the top of the stairs, then knelt and looked through the railing into the living room. Nobody was there, and even in the darkness, I could tell nothing had been disturbed. My PlayStation remained in place, which, in my mind, served as a telltale sign that no one else was in the house except possibly my mother. If someone were here to rob us and had walked through the entire house, they definitely would have taken the most expensive item in the room. At that point, I simply wanted to confirm whether my mother was walking around or if I was experiencing some strange auditory hallucinations. I descended the steps and called out, "Mom, you home?" No response or movement occurred throughout the house. I walked through the hallway into the kitchen, where I immediately spotted a shoe print on the tile floor. Looking up, my eyes locked onto a figure across the room. A man sat at the dining table wearing a dark mask, his clothing entirely black, making it difficult to discern any features. He stared at me with an emotionless expression but said nothing and didn't move. I ran straight back upstairs and locked myself in my room while calling 911. The operator kept me updated on the police's estimated arrival time, but after a minute, I heard the man slowly walk across the downstairs area toward the bottom of the staircase. I whispered frantically to the operator until I heard the front door open and the man departing the house. Less than 30 seconds later, headlights shone through the window as my mother pulled into the driveway. I rushed outside to meet her and explain the situation. When police arrived, they conducted a thorough search but found nothing incriminating that would help identify the man. From appearances, he wasn't there to rob us and seemed to have no interest in me either, which means he was most likely planning to hurt or abduct my mother. This would explain why he broke in only minutes before my mother's usual arrival time. It makes me consider what could have happened if I hadn't gone downstairs to investigate, or if my mother had arrived just a minute earlier and entered the house unaware of the man waiting for her.
Don't forget to like and subscribe if you dare to hear more chilling stories.
I'm 32 and live alone in a rural house. I have a few neighbors half a mile away that I occasionally talk to, but I mostly keep to myself and only venture into town when necessary. Being semi-retired, I spend most of my time at home, though I do some contracting work a few months each year. During late fall, I was gathering all my equipment from the yard and storing it in the shed to prepare for winter: tools, lawnmowers, and various items I'd left outside. While working outside, I noticed something unusual: a man walking along the road connecting to my driveway. He carried nothing, no backpack or camping gear. For context, this road was entirely empty aside from a few houses like mine, and the town was a 4-hour walk away. I watched him until he disappeared far down the road. After he was gone, I looked in both directions and saw no cars parked on either side. It was genuinely odd, but after a while I stopped thinking about it and finished my yard work. I returned inside before dark and prepared dinner while cooling off. As I sat eating, a sudden thud from outside startled me. It was a wooden sound, seeming to come from the shed area. Looking through the window into the yard, I saw the shed door wide open. Though old, the door had never unlatched itself before. Still uncertain about what was happening, I knew I had to investigate and close the door at minimum. I retrieved my rifle just in case, though I felt confident it wasn't anything dangerous. Walking out to the shed, I listened carefully and heard nothing other than the night's quietness. I also scanned the field and saw no signs of wildlife or people. When I reached the open shed door, I turned on my flashlight and shined it inside. Nothing appeared out of place. I stepped in and conducted a more thorough search for any hidden animals, but found nothing. I closed the shed door and ensured it was secure, then started walking back. As I made my way through the field toward my house, an eerie feeling grew inside me. I didn't know what it was, but it continued intensifying as I reached the front door. I stepped inside and locked the door behind me. Walking into the hallway, I spotted a shoe print on the floor. Flicking on the light, I saw a line of dirty shoe prints leading across the hallway up to the spare bedroom. My heart began beating faster as I held my rifle up and took a deep breath, then carefully walked up to the door. I leaned my head against the wood and listened, hearing what sounded like someone breathing on the other side. Before I could think about what to do next, the handle twisted from my grip and the door swung open. I jumped back and raised the rifle as a man appeared ready to charge at me, holding a large metal shovel raised like a weapon. I think my gun stopped him in his tracks.
He stood in the doorway, gripping the shovel like a weapon, his face full of rage. I yelled as loudly as possible for him to stay back, trying to sound intimidating, though I was undoubtedly terrified. The man maintained his distance, but his angry expression never faded. From this moment, I didn't know what to do. Police wouldn't be able to arrive for probably an hour if I called, and I definitely didn't want to hold him at gunpoint for that long, risking anything happening. As we stood in strange silence, the man suddenly threw the shovel in my direction, then sprinted back into the room. I rushed in to see what he was doing and watched him crawl out of the window. Part of me wanted to stop him, but another part couldn't bring myself to act. He jumped out and ran off into the field, escaping into the vast, empty night with no way of knowing his destination. To this day, that man has never been identified and his intentions remain unknown. All I can say is that if I hadn't had my rifle in my hands, or if he had caught me off guard, I likely wouldn't be here today.
Don't forget to like and subscribe if you dare to hear more chilling stories. I don't travel out of town frequently, so this was one of the few times I needed accommodation, other than staying with friends or family. The area I needed to visit was small, and most hotels didn't look very appealing, but to my surprise, there was a single home listed on Airbnb. It was my first time using the platform, but the house looked decent, much better than the available hotels. I requested the dates, and within minutes the place was booked. The following week, I began the drive. When I arrived in the town after about 14 hours of travel, it was well into the night. The town almost looked deserted compared to where I was accustomed to living. All house lights were off, all stores were closed, and no people or cars were visible. Of course, being the middle of the night, I didn't expect this small town to be illuminated and active, but it was still unsettling considering I hadn't seen it during daylight hours. I had only this as my first impression. The street leading to the Airbnb was equally dark, winding through a forested neighborhood until I eventually reached the house. It was one of few that had its porch and outdoor lights on, but one upstairs window also had light coming through. I figured the previous guest had simply forgotten to turn it off, so I thought nothing of it and began bringing my belongings to the front door. I retrieved the key code from my email and entered, locking the door behind me. I quickly placed my belongings in the corner of the room, then went upstairs to turn off the light that had been left on. It was one of the spare bedrooms, containing only a bed and a small dresser. I switched it off, then went to the main bedroom to set up my things. I was only staying one night, but it booked 2 days because I needed to be there late into the following day. I was awake for no more than an hour before finally getting into bed and settling in for the night. I rested my eyes and tried to sleep, but lay awake for a long time. I sat up quickly, hearing a thud resonate through the house walls. I stared at the door, trying to think what could have caused the sound, but with no ideas coming to mind, I got up to investigate. I opened the door softly, peering into the upstairs hallway. It was dark and quiet now. No more thuds, only the sound of the house swaying in the wind. I stepped back and quietly shut the door. But a strange feeling came over me that made me wait. As I thought more about the sound I'd heard, soft creaks started moving along the floorboards from the other room. I listened with my ear against the door as the creaking moved into the hallway and then began approaching my door. I was so shocked that I almost didn't realize it had to be someone's footsteps approaching. My heart started racing as they came right up to the other side of the door. I gripped the handle tightly to prevent it from moving, and moments later I felt it being pulled down. As soon as I resisted, they eased off. There was a brief moment before suddenly the handle was forced down and they slammed into the door. It swung halfway open before I pressed my body back against it. I only saw half of their face in the doorway, and in their eyes was an anger I never expected to encounter. After a struggle, I somehow managed to push the door back into the latch and lock it. The man on the other side tried to reopen it, but after yelling several unpleasant words toward me, he ran downstairs and out of the house. I was still catching my breath with my mind racing, but I gathered myself and dialed 911. For such a small town, they arrived shortly after. The Airbnb owner continued with the case after I left the following day, but I wish I had kept up with it.
That man seemed so desperate to enter my room and was in some state of rage, as if he wanted to hurt me, as if I'd done something to him. Everything about it is disturbing, and I don't think I'll ever get it out of my head. But Airbnbs probably won't be something I participate in again for a long time.
Don't forget to like and subscribe if you dare to hear more chilling stories.
About 3 years ago, I was staying in a rental house while vacationing to visit my brother. He lives 6 hours away from me, so I don't get to see him often, and he only has a one-bedroom apartment, which necessitates my staying elsewhere when I visit. The house I rented was very close to my brother's apartment and cost the same as nearby hotels, so it was an easy choice to select the house over hotel accommodation. I arrived in town early in the morning and met my brother for lunch, then purchased some groceries and returned to the rental around 5 p.m. The place didn't offer much beyond a couch, television, and bed, but for the price, I wasn't expecting luxury. I stayed up until 9 p.m., then went to bed. It had been a long day, so I was looking forward to getting adequate sleep. I lay in bed awake longer than desired, falling asleep after about an hour. When my eyes opened, the room was in complete darkness, and I could sense it was the middle of the night. Before I could even check the time, I heard something outside the room. Footsteps slowly walking down the hallway, then a door closing softly, followed by silence. It was like my entire body had frozen. I lay in bed motionless, staring through the dark room. After a minute passed with no more sounds, I got up and looked into the hallway. At the far end, I could see the front door, which I knew was the door I'd heard close, but I didn't know if they were still in the house or if they had left. I quietly walked through the other rooms, not seeing anyone. Actually, the only sign of their presence was the front door being unlocked. I didn't see any footprints or notice anything missing. After checking the locks on all doors, I called 911. They arrived fairly quickly but didn't accomplish much. They advised making sure all doors were locked and contacting the owner, but aside from their useless guidance, they provided no intention to investigate further. I stayed awake that night and waited until morning, unable to sleep. After calling the rental owner and discussing what happened, I went to see my brother. While out, the owner informed me that he'd changed the door's PIN code, which did make me feel considerably better. I was out until late that day, having dinner and drinks with my brother and being dropped off at the rental sometime between 8 and 9 p.m. I went to the couch and sat down feeling sleepy, but also experiencing that nervousness again about the situation. Every time my eyes were about to close, my head would fill with fear of the intruder returning. Knowing I needed sleep tonight since I hadn't gotten any the previous night, I decided to walk through the house again and check the rooms, hoping to ease my mind. I walked around the living room and kitchen, then went down the hallway to the bedroom. I opened the closet and checked the attached bathroom, and just before I walked out, I heard footsteps running through the hallway toward the bedroom I was in. I swung around the corner and only caught a glimpse of a large man as he slammed the bedroom door shut. Then I heard his footsteps departing toward the living room. While I stood in place, listening, he moved all around the living room and kitchen, staying inside the house for probably 2 minutes before I heard the front door open and close behind him. Police arrived quickly after I called again, and this time the homeowner came by as well. The living room and kitchen looked like they had been ransacked. Furniture was scattered everywhere and cabinets were all open with their contents tossed across the floor. After closer inspection, though, the owner didn't see anything missing. It appeared more like whoever that man was had been looking for something very specific and nothing more. I left the rental and got a hotel after that, and within a few days, I was never updated again about anything. I assume he was never found, but the situation has left me with many questions. Something that really troubles me is that I had checked the entire house that one night, so where was he hiding? How long had he been in the house with me? Was he watching me? And what would have happened if I had fallen asleep on the couch?
Don't forget to like and subscribe if you dare to hear more chilling stories.
I was 22 at the time and living in a very small one-bedroom house in the cheapest area of my city. After work on a Friday night, I went online to game with a bunch of my friends. It was the perfect night for staying up late. Heavy downpour outside and no work or school the next day. We played for probably 2 hours before a sudden sound made me pause everything for a minute. It was a thump, sounding like it came from upstairs. My initial concern was a possible roof leak caused by the rainfall, so I went up to investigate. The only rooms upstairs were the single bedroom and a half bathroom, and neither showed any signs of leaks anywhere. So I ran back down and resumed gaming with my friends. I stayed on for a while, only logging off at 2 a.m. because everyone else went to bed. I shut everything down and sat on the couch with some snacks while I watched YouTube on my phone. 10 minutes in, I heard another thump. It came from upstairs again, but was so muffled that it almost sounded like it was on the roof or something. I conducted an even more thorough search of both my bedroom and the bathroom up there, but couldn't find anything causing the sound. I was certain it wasn't thunder either, because it vibrated through the walls like something literally hitting the house. After 10 minutes of searching around, I was so determined to figure it out that I put on my shoes and went out into the rain to see if there was something more noticeable from outside. At first, I saw nothing significant, but then I noticed a tree branch getting pretty close to the side of my house. It was a large and sturdy branch, though, positioned a good 3 or 4 feet away from the siding, and even in the rain, it wasn't really swaying much. It seemed unlikely that it could reach the side and bang against the house. As I looked at it, though, I realized there was a small window on the house that the tree somewhat covered. It was higher than my bedroom window, meaning it had to be an attic. I had no idea there was an attic in this house. The hatch was definitely nowhere noticeable, and the roof wasn't a steep slope, so it didn't look like there would even be room for one. This hidden window was the first indication I'd ever seen of there being an attic. I went inside even more curious than before and started searching for the hatch that had to be somewhere. It took a minute, but I found it inside my bedroom closet. It was small and perfectly smooth with the ceiling, basically blending in aside from tiny gaps where it opens. I stood on a box and pulled it down, releasing a rusty ladder from the opening. Immediately, I was hit with a rotten smell, followed by another thump sound from above. I could tell the attic was extremely short, maybe 2 feet tall at most. I climbed up carefully and looked into this tiny space, basically a wide, dark tunnel. At the end, by the window, I could make out a figure ducked down on all fours, looking straight at me. I almost fell off the ladder trying to jump down and run away. I heard them shuffling around as I got my phone and left the house, calling 911 from my driveway. The police arrived and detained the man, who was apparently just some homeless person. He had climbed the tree up to the window and made his way in, staying up there for at least a week without me noticing. The absurdity of it all was almost unbelievable. I moved out very soon after that. In every house since, I've always checked the attics, but the one thing that has stayed with me is the image of that man at the end of the attic on his hands and knees, staring at me with eyes resembling both fear and anger. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you dare to hear more chilling stories.
For the past few years, I've been working 2 jobs and typically leave my house around 6 a.m. and don't get home until 10 p.m. Then I sleep, and most days I repeat that same schedule. Unfortunately, that's just the situation I've been in for a while. This happened just a couple months ago. I had come home one night and did what I usually do, shower and get ready for bed. But while I was in the shower, I heard some movement that sounded like it was just outside the bathroom door. I quickly got out and checked, seeing nothing, so I figured it just had to be the house creaking or something. I finished cleaning up and got in bed.
All throughout the night, I kept hearing these odd noises coming from throughout the house, mostly just some sort of creaking, kind of like if it was really windy outside and making the house sway. But there was no wind and no reason for the house to be making any noise. At one point in the middle of the night, I even got up and walked around to try and find out what it was, but I found nothing. In the morning, I was very tired and had to work the whole day, relying on coffee to keep me awake. By the time I got home, I was exhausted and sleepy, really hoping for a good night's sleep. I went right upstairs and turned the shower on, but before I even got in, I heard something outside the bathroom door again. This time I was sure it was right outside the door, and it sounded like it passed right by and left the bedroom. Although as unlikely as it was, it really sounded like something had moved across my room. I knew I had to look to see if someone was there, but I was feeling really uneasy. When I did finally get the courage to look, I didn't see anything. I walked through the whole house and did a quick search of each room, but I was convinced it had to be something odd going on inside the walls or under the floorboards. I showered and got in bed, falling asleep just before midnight. The instant I woke up, I knew something was wrong. It was very dark, so it was still well into the night, and the entire house was silent. I wasn't sure what had woken me up, but I could feel that it had something to do with the sounds I'd been hearing. I peered over at the door and saw the slightest movement of a shadow from under the crack. I jolted up and stared across the room. My heart immediately started racing as I saw the shadow move away from the door and heard them begin walking down the upstairs hallway. I was horrified and frozen in fear, but it must have been the surge of adrenaline that got me out of my bed and made me swing open the door. I looked out, and standing at the end of the hallway was the dark outline of a man. His eyes were the only thing that really stood out to me. They pierced through me with a sense of anger and restlessness. I slammed my bedroom door shut and locked it. The man's footsteps immediately went down the stairs, but I took another 30 seconds before I heard him leave the house. I got the police to come as soon as possible, but they didn't have much luck. They found a few signs of the man being in my house for at least a few days, but that was about it. I don't know where he was hiding, but I always think back to when I'd hear him walk past the bathroom door. Maybe he was sleeping in my bed, then would quickly hide in the closet until I got in the shower, where he would take the opportunity to leave the room. I also wonder why he spent that extra time downstairs before leaving the house when he knew I'd seen him and had likely called the police. Everything is just speculation at this point, but knowing that some random man was hiding in my house while I was sleeping is a horrifying thing to think about. As far as I know, the man hasn't come back and there have been no updates on his identity.
If these stories sent chills down your spine, don't vanish into the darkness without hitting that like button. Share your scariest experience in the comments below, because your story might be featured next. And remember, the scariest thing is missing out, so subscribe now before the next nightmare finds you.